A baby inhales the sharp, cold air of a Judean night. The smell of damp limestone and animal sweat hangs thick in a feeding cave with his creation. It is simply the first time he decided to stay. This changes how you read every page of the Old Testament. The ancient mythologies of Egypt and Babylon are filled with gods who float safely above the suffering of the dirt. They hurl lightning from pristine summits or demand sacrifices from behind thick temple veils. Their interactions with humanity are insulated, immune to the jagged, rusted edges of a broken world. They demand blood, but they never offer their own. But the God of the Hebrew Scriptures refuses to remain safe behind the veil. By manifesting in a physical form, even in these temporary Old Testament encounters, he is doing far more than delivering a divine edict. He is establishing a trajectory. He is proving that the divine is willing to step directly into the blast zone of human history. If a localized manifestation of God can sit down to eat roasted meat under an oak tree, he is capable of experiencing the hollow, gnawing ache of human hunger. If he can grapple in the freezing, thick mud of the Jabbok River until his skin is bruised and his breath is labored, he can experience absolute physical exhaustion. These appearances are not a series of theological cameos. They are a rehearsal. The physical body is not a costume he wears to intimidate. It bridges the terrifying gap between the thunder-cracking deity of Sinai and the weeping carpenter of Nazareth. Jesus was not a sudden pivot. It is the chosen arena where he will ultimately suffer. Because if the uncreated Word can manifest real, tangible skin that can be grabbed by a desperate man in the dark, that same skin possesses the capacity to be pierced by cold Roman iron. If he can allow his arm to be pinned to the ground by Jacob, he can allow his wrists to be pinned to a wooden beam at Golgotha. The encounters in Genesis establish the undeniable tangibility of God, setting the theological stage for a crucifixion centuries before the empire that invented it even existed. He is showing us that he does not stand outside our suffering. He steps into the very center of it. But this figure does not always arrive in a state of quiet vulnerability. He does not always wait to be invited to a meal or tackled in the dark. Sometimes, he steps into the ancient dust to take absolute control. And when a warrior with a drawn weapon suddenly materializes outside the impenetrable, towering walls of Jericho, the question is no longer whether God can be touched. The question is whose side he is on. The massive stone walls of Jericho cast a long shadow across the dry dirt. Joshua stands alone in the quiet, in the divine strategy. He was the strategy from the garden onward. You can track him, a stranger eating roasted meat under the... He is a military genius assessing an impenetrable fortress. He turns. A man is standing directly in front of him. An iron sword is drawn and gleaming in the sun. Joshua walks up to the blade. He demands a military classification. Are you for us? Or for our adversaries? The stranger's answer is a single, terrifying word. No. He refuses the human binary. He continues, "But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Joshua falls flat on his face in the dust. He worships. He waits for orders. The stranger gives a command that echoes backward across the centuries. Take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. It is the exact same command spoken from the burning bush. It is the exact same presence. The stranger is not joining a human army. He is taking command of the earth. But this figure does not just appear in moments of conquest. He shows up in moments of absolute, catastrophic collapse. Centuries pass. The nation falls. The setting shifts from a dusty Judean plain to a Babylonian execution square. Flames roar with deafening violence. The furnace is so white-hot it instantly incinerates the guards, throwing the prisoners inside. Oak trees of Mamre. A man wrestling in the wet mud on the banks of the Jabbok River. A commander standing with a drawn, 3 Hebrew men fall into the inferno. They are bound in their cloaks and their tunics. They disappear into the fire. King Nebuchadnezzar watches from a safe distance. Suddenly, he leaps to his feet. He stares into the blistering heat. He asks his counselors a frantic question. "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They agree. 3 men went in, but I see 4 men unbound. The king stammers, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods, a 4th figure pacing casually inside the flames. He is not a distant observer projecting comfort from a throne room. He is a co-sufferer walking in the ashes. The flames do not consume him. The smoke does not choke him. The heat does not melt his form. He simply steps into the white-hot center of the execution furnace to ensure his people do not burn alone. And this is where the ancient narrative bleeds into the present. Because if this is how the Son of God operated before he ever took on permanent flesh in Bethlehem, it radically changes how you understand the space you are occupying right now. Iron sword, outside the walls of Jericho. A 4th figure pacing casually inside the white-hot roar of a Babylonian execution furnace. If you are in a season where the silence in your room feels heavier than it should, maybe you are sitting on the edge of a bed right now, staring at the glow of a screen in the dark, carrying the physical, exhausting weight of a situation you cannot fix. A medical scan that came back with the wrong shadows. A relationship that shattered like cold glass on a tile floor. A financial collapse that leaves a metallic taste of panic in the back of your throat. In those moments of absolute, suffocating isolation, it is incredibly easy to adopt a very specific, very tragic theology. We convince ourselves that God is entirely transcendent, safely insulated from our pain. We picture him sitting on a pristine, distant throne, separated from our immediate reality by millions of light years of cold, empty space. We assume we have to bridge the gap. We think we need to speak the perfect prayer, read the right chapters, or generate enough emotional energy to pull his attention down into our mess. But the ancient Hebrew text refuses to let you believe that. The presence of God is not a destination you have to reach. It is a person who invades your space. Look at the historical pattern. He does not demand that Abraham climb a holy mountain to find him. Same presence, same person. But to feel the weight of what is actually happening in these ancient encounters, to understand who is really, he walks directly into the suffocating, dusty heat of a desert afternoon and sits down under a tree. He does not require Jacob to purify himself in a temple. He meets him in the freezing, wet mud of a riverbank in the middle of a midnight panic attack. He does not wait for the Hebrew exiles to escape the execution square. He steps straight into the blinding white heat of a Babylonian furnace. And when you understand who the Malik YHWH really is, it changes how you understand your own crisis. If the Eternal Son was willing to walk into the dirt of the ancient Near East long before Bethlehem, he is not repulsed by the mess of your current reality. He is not standing outside your locked door, waiting for you to sweep up the broken pieces before he crosses the threshold. He is already standing in the center of the room. He is the God who wrestles in the dark. He is the 4th man in the fire. And sometimes, he is the commander, standing with a drawn iron sword, waiting for you to stop fighting your own exhausting battles, drop to the dirt, and take off your shoes. This relentless pursuit, this willingness to step out of eternity and into the ashes, is not just walking through the pages of Genesis and Joshua. You have to start with a paradox, a contradiction so severe it kept ancient rabbis awake at night, a collection of random ancient myths. It is a single, unbroken thread, and it is pulling humanity toward a climax that ties every single appearance together. The coals burn out under the oak trees of Mamre. The sun rises over the crushed reeds of the Jabbok River. The white-hot ash finally settles in a Babylonian square. The appearances fade, but the pattern remains. A stranger ate roasted meat in the desert heat, and a promised son was born from a dead womb. A messenger found a weeping slave girl by a spring, and the God of seeing gave her a future. A flame burned from the center of a dry thorn bush, and an enslaved nation heard the voice of the great I Am. A man wrestled in the freezing mud of a riverbank, and a deceiver walked away with a new name. A commander stood in the dust with a drawn iron sword, and an impenetrable fortress fell to the ground. A 4th figure paced inside a white-hot execution furnace, and 3 exiles walked out without the smell of smoke, and the exact same uncreated word took on permanent flesh in a Bethlehem cave to make sure the veil between heaven and earth. Exodus 3:3. Verse 20. Moses is standing on the mountain, asking for the one thing every human heart secretly craves. Show me your glory. Would be torn forever. One thread, one story. But here's the part I keep coming back to. Not the drawn sword outside Jericho. Not the blinding light of the fire. It is the mud at Peniel. The reality that the infinite, uncontainable creator of the cosmos allowed himself to be grabbed, held, and constrained by a failing, terrified man in the middle of a midnight panic attack. If you are in a season where your faith feels less like peaceful surrender and more like a violent, exhausting struggle in the dark, do not let go. The wrestling is not a sign of his absence. It is the proof of his proximity. And may the God, who has never once been afraid of the dirt, step into the absolute center of your fire and hold you until the morning comes. God's response establishes the bedrock of Jewish theology. You cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live. This is not a rule of ancient etiquette. It is a law of spiritual physics. To the ancient mind, the Creator is utterly transcendent. A young mother's hands, still trembling from labor, wrap a fragile chest in coarse strips of cloth. Most people assume this is the beginning. The infinite cannot be contained within the finite without shattering the container. Unshielded divine glory is a consuming fire, a localized radiation that would instantly overwhelm the human optic nerve, evaporate water from the lungs, and incinerate flesh. To see the Father in his raw, unfiltered essence is a fatal exposure. But this creates an immediate, glaring problem for anyone reading the Hebrew Bible. Because you turn the page, and the impossible happens. People see God, they see him, and they do not die. They sit down and eat warm flatbread with him. They argue with him over the fate of burning cities. They grab him by the shoulders in the wet mud and refuse to let go until the sun comes up. If the text insists God is invisible and lethal to look upon, how is an ancient patriarch staring directly into his eyes? For centuries, scholars tried to iron out this wrinkle. They suggested these were just ordinary created angels acting as proxies, carrying the divine name, like a royal messenger carrying a king's seal. They argued it was all metaphorical, a waking dream projected into a prophet's mind while his body stayed perfectly still. The contradiction is not an editorial mistake. It is a deliberate doorway. When the early church fathers, men like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus, read these ancient scrolls, they did not see a conflict. They saw the Trinity functioning exactly as it always has. The New Testament writers, particularly John and Paul, most people read the text as if the second person of the Trinity is waiting in the wings for 4,000 years, explicitly state that no human has ever seen the Father. He dwells in unapproachable light. The Father is the invisible architect, the unoriginate source of all things. But the Son is the image of the invisible God. He is the mediator, the bridge. Whenever the eternal God needs to step down into the dirt of human history, whenever the divine needs to be seen, heard, and touched by fragile human hands, it is the second person of the Trinity who puts on a temporary physical form and does the walking. Theologians call these moments Christophanies, an appearance of Christ before his physical incarnation. And the most undeniable piece of evidence for this doesn't happen in a mystical dour, foggy vision in the clouds. It happens on a suffocatingly hot afternoon, in the shade of a tree, over a plate of roasted calf. The sun beats down on the plains of Mamre. The heat is suffocating. The air shimmers over the dry dirt. Abraham sits at the entrance of his tent, seeking the heavy shade of the oak tree. He is 99 years old. His body aches from the recent covenant of circumcision. He looks up. 3 men are standing in the glare of the midday sun. They are not floating. They do not have wings. They have dust on their feet. Abraham runs. He bows his face to the scorched earth. He begs them to stay. He orders water brought in a clay basin to wash their feet. They assume that while the Father is busy splitting seas, commanding prophets, and flooding the earth, the Son exists only as a theological concept. He rushes into the tent. He tells Sarah to knead fine flour and bake bread on the hot stones. He runs to the herd. He selects a tender, choice calf. He gives it to a servant to prepare. He takes curds and milk. He sets the feast before them. He stands nearby under the tree while they eat. Real teeth tearing into roasted meat. Real hands wiping grease from a beard. Real weight pressing down the grass. The narrator of Genesis drops a theological bomb in the very first verse of the chapter. And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. The word used there is YHWH, the sacred, unpronounceable name of the eternal God. Two of these men will soon turn and leave. They will walk down the valley toward the doomed city of Sodom as created angels on a mission of judgment. But one of them stays. One of them remains standing before Abraham. Abraham steps closer. He begins to bargain. He negotiates for the lives of the righteous in a wicked city. 50 people, 40, 30, 10. He asks a question that echoes through all of human history. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? Abraham is not praying to a cloud. He is speaking to a man standing directly in front of him. He is negotiating face to face with the creator of the universe, who is currently digesting a meal of veal and warm flatbread. This is not a localized anomaly, waiting for a cue in the Gospel of Matthew. But if you look closer, if you look past the modern chapter divisions, it is a prophetic preview. God taking on flesh to sit at a table with a broken humanity. God stepping into the dirt to listen to human intercession. The Son doing exactly what the Son will do centuries later in the dusty villages of Galilee. But this figure does not just appear to Abraham. As the centuries roll forward, he shows up to outcasts in the wilderness, to soldiers on the battlefield, and to prophets in the dark. And when he does, he carries a very specific, mysterious title. A title that our modern English translations completely flatten. Genesis chapter 16. A pregnant Egyptian slave girl is running for her life. She collapses by a spring of water, in the dry, unforgiving wind of the Shur desert. She is alone, terrified, and waiting to die. And then a figure finds her. Our modern English Bibles identify this figure with a familiar phrase. They call him the angel of the Lord. But the phrase in the ancient Hebrew text is the Malach YHWH. The root word malach simply means a messenger or a representative. It appears hundreds of times throughout the Hebrew scriptures to describe ordinary human envoys or created angelic beings delivering news. But when this specific word is paired with the sacred, unutterable name of God, YHWH, something strange happens with the grammar of the passage. And dig into the Hebrew texts that the earliest Christians actually read. You start to see a pattern that shatters that timeline entirely. This specific messenger does not just deliver a quote from a distant king. He speaks entirely in the first person. He looks at Hagar and says, "I will surely multiply your offspring." He does not say that God will do it. He claims the divine authority to do it himself. And Hagar responds by looking at this figure and giving him a name. "You are a God of seeing." You find this exact same blurring of identity in Exodus chapter 3. Moses is staring at the crackling flames of a thorn bush in the deep desert. The text explicitly says the Malach YHWH appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. But 2 verses later, the narrative shifts seamlessly, stating that God called to him out of the bush, claiming the title, "I Am." A few chapters later, in Judges 2, this same figure appears to the nation of Israel and says, "I brought you up from Egypt." If the way we are reading these ancient texts is opening up the Bible for you in a new way, you are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So, the messenger keeps appearing. The ancient text is carefully holding 2 immense truths in a delicate tension. This figure is clearly distinct from God the Father. You see footprints in the dust of the ancient Near East that do not belong to a prophet. You see physical, breathing, tangible encounters, because he is sent by the Lord to deliver a message. Yet, simultaneously, he shares the exact identity, the exact authority, and the exact nature of the Lord. He is not a created being acting as a divine radio tower. He is the uncreated Word, functioning as the visible bridge between heaven and earth. Whenever the infinite God needs to interact with finite humanity, it is the Malach YHWH who steps into the frame. He is the pre-incarnate Christ, appearing as the ultimate messenger of the Father's will. But speaking to an outcast in the desert, or calling from a burning bush, still maintains a certain polite distance. A few generations after Abraham, this figure decides to get much closer, and it happens in the dark, in the wet mud, with a man who is about to lose everything. The Jabbok River cuts through the rocky canyon. The water runs black and freezing in the dead of night. Jacob stands on the muddy bank. He is entirely alone. His family is on the other side. His brother Esau is marching toward him with 400 armed men. Tomorrow means slaughter. Tomorrow means the end of the promise. Jacob waits in the dark, shivering in the damp air. Then, someone grabs him. There is no dialogue, no warning. A man steps out of the shadows and tackles him into the mud. They fight, with a God who is strictly supposed to be invisible. Bethlehem is not an introduction. It is a re-entry. This is not a polite theological debate. This is a violent, physical, desperate struggle. They grapple in the wet dirt. Lungs burning, muscles tearing. The smell of river mud and sweat fills the cold air. They fight for hours, locked together, rolling in the reeds, crushing the vegetation beneath their weight until the eastern sky begins to turn gray. The sun breaches the horizon. The stranger sees that Jacob will not surrender. He reaches out and simply touches the hollow of Jacob's thigh. The joint dislocates with a sickening, audible pop. Jacob collapses. The pain is blinding, but he refuses to let go. He clings to the stranger's chest, weeping in the dirt. He gasps out a final, desperate demand. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The stranger asks for his name. The deceiver finally confesses who he really is, and the stranger changes it. He names him Israel, the one who wrestles with God. The man vanishes into the morning mist. Jacob limps away, dragging his paralyzed leg through the dust. He stops, breathless, and looks back at the torn-up earth by the river. He names the place Peniel. The word combines two ancient Hebrew roots, panim, meaning face, and El, meaning God. The incarnation in Mary's womb is not the first time the creator of the cosmos decided to put on skin and stand in the dirt. Jacob explains exactly what just happened, and his words echo the terrifying law of Sinai. "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." He knows the rule. No man can see the Father and live. Yet his heart is still beating. He did not see a cloud. He did not see a glowing orb. He felt real hands grip his shoulders. He felt breath against his neck. He felt physical fingers crush the socket of his hip. Jacob was not fighting a localized weather event. He was wrestling the pre-incarnate Son of God. The creator of the universe stepped into the dirt, put on a temporary human form, and allowed a terrified, failing man to grab hold of him. He let himself be constrained by human arms. But the implications of this physical vulnerability go much deeper than a dislocated hip. Because if the divine can take on a physical form, if he can be touched and held in the dark, it means something entirely unprecedented is possible. When the eternal God steps into time and takes on the constraints of a physical body, he is making a terrifying concession. He is accepting the limitations of calcium and bone, the tearing of muscle fiber, the biological necessity of drawing oxygen into a lung. We are a species intimately acquainted with pain, and we naturally project a distant, unfeeling perfection onto our deities.